All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we are going to talk about side hustles, the gig economy, life, and why it looks so inherently different in 2025 than it did before. So sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverages. Let's get at her. All right, there we are back on the air. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks again for all of your comments you keep sending into InsideMyCanoehead.ca. Our host, our platform, everything you need about this podcast is there. We encourage you to drop by, check out all the links, buy me a coffee if you love this podcast. Listen, I'm fueled by great black coffee, imported coffee. We don't make that here in the frozen north. We can't grow the plants, but we absolutely love it. And on top of that, all the links to our publications YouTube channel, everything, all our social feeds are there at InsideMyCanoehead.ca. And I appreciate the feedback that I'm getting at jeff@preparednesslabs.ca, which is my website, my email. And I say this regularly because I think it's important for the 1.8 million podcasters, I think now, it's incredibly growing, that are out there in the world, that you have the ability to reach out and talk directly to the podcaster whom you listen to, right? You have the ability to drop me an email, lands in my personal inbox. Nobody around here touches that email address but me. And then I answer, and I answer every one of them. And I've had ones that have called me every name you can imagine in the book: fool, dumb, idiot. And some I don't say on the podcast without clicking that explicit button. And that's fine, because I actually respond to them, right? I respond to them and tell them why I did what I did, why I said what I said, and offering them the ability to engage in some type of adult level discourse, right? And most of them, believe it or not, actually come back and will say, well, thank you very much for the information. I now understand why, etc. This one guy went on a long diatribe about how I was an idiot related to my advice on preparedness and emergency kits. And so I responded with a series of links to research articles demonstrating that they don't work and demonstrating how they're inconsistent lists and a whole bunch of other reasons to back up my position. And then I asked him to offer something that he had other than his personal belief and opinion. And he came back, oh, I wasn't aware. I didn't know people looked into that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I thank for it. And it's not that we're looking for capitulation and conversation. Not at all. I want people who have opposing views to me to challenge my views. I want you to come at me, as the old saying goes, a giver. Tell me why you think I'm wrong. Tell me why you think I've made an error in judgment. Or tell me why you think I might not be considering something that you believe to be true, important, etc. My point here is simple. We need to increase the level of discourse that we're having in society, especially this episode is being recorded on the 2nd of February. I'm going off on a really cool trip across Canada. I'll be back by time it's published on Valentine's Day, so hug the person you love today. It's pretty important. That's one thing we're going to talk about. But the reality is just that, is that we don't talk, we yell, right? So you're left-winger or right-wing. Everybody forgets that the political spectrum is actually a cross. It's not left and right is just one component. Authoritarian and libertarian, top to bottom, is also there. So it's really quadrant, but whatever, we can go down that road. The point is that everybody wants to label you a certain thing so that they are able to assign a bunch of generally accepted labels and meaning to that. In other words, if I can call you X, that means you're these following 5 things, right? So I feel comfortable about the fact that I can label you, and then because I've labeled you, I don't need to listen to you anymore because you're one of these 5 things, and you're happily disinformation, right? We don't have a conversation anymore, and part of what I want to talk about today is the opportunities that exist in the modern forum, in the modern 2025 for all of us, starting with side hustles, right? There was a time, and I wrote a piece on my blog about the death of the American dream. And it's the fact, everybody says that the American dream right now is dead, right? Well, that's because you're looking at a dream people pursued in the 70s or 80s based upon an economy that existed in the 70s and 80s, which doesn't exist anymore in any measure whatsoever. And you're looking at the 2020s and you're saying, I can't do what the boomer generation and the early Gen Xers did and therefore somebody's oppressing me or some bad thing has happened. No, you're taking a dream that is only and was only possible in a very short period of time because the economic conditions existed for that. And you're trying to say you can't do it now, so somehow that dream's not possible. Well, yeah, absolutely. And it never will be, because you're trying to chase a dream that doesn't have the economic conditions regular. So the dream today is not to buy and own a house and do this, that, and everything that the boomers did. That's not the current American dream. What we have right now is a different economic model. And the economic model says you no longer need to follow the standard path of get a job, work for a corporation for 40 years, get a pension, and go. It's one where it's opened up more to what we talk about on this podcast all the time, which is personal responsibility, right? You are responsible for your retirement. It is not the government's job or anybody else's job to pay your bills when you retire. If you're like me in your mid-50s and you don't have any retirement planning, you're in a bit of pickle. But if you're listening, and a number of our demographics listening to this podcast are younger. So if you're in your 20s right now and you don't have a funded retirement when you're 60, that's your fault. It's not society's, it's not pressure. It's because you didn't make the cognitive decisions now, ones that you're clearly aware of and clearly understand, that you are required to take a percentage of your current income, whatever that may be, and set it aside for the sole and principal purpose of retirement. It doesn't matter what happens in your life between now and retirement. No event that happens between now and retirement will ever justify you accessing your retirement funds. It's a very simple solution. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it, and they don't choose to do it. And then they get to the point where right here in Canada, for example, and I'll talk about, and a number of different countries have national programs for retirees, right? So here in Canada, we have a Canada Pension Plan, which is a mandatory enrollment when you're paid a salary. You pay a certain percentage of your income. Your employer matches it. It goes into a national program. The idea behind CPP, if you earn an income for your whole working year, is it's designed by actuarial principles to fund about a third of your retirement costs. That's what CPP is designed to do. Now, there's old age security and guaranteed income supplement, which are separately funded things out of the federal pool of money that's added onto that. But the CPP, the Canada Pension Plan, on basis, is designed to fund about 33% of someone's retirement income. So it's mandatory. And it was brought mandatory because we thought it would be a really bad idea to have a whole bunch of old age people trying to work in their 80s or sitting on the side of the street begging for coins when they're 78 years old, right? So if we made it mandatory, we forced everybody into it against their will, even if they didn't want to, made them pay, made businesses pay, and it turns out it's not a bad thing, right? So it exists, but it's meant to pay for a third. The rest of it is actually up to you to fund. Now, in the modern economy today, you don't have the restrictions as before. We have the internet. The internet has changed everything. And I know you've heard that 100 times, but let me put it this way. When I grew up in 1970s and 1980s, when I was looking at employment, the internet didn't exist, right? I had to go find a job that somebody was offering. I had to join a profession like either the military or a plumber or a doctor or a lawyer, or I had to become an entrepreneur. Those are really the only three choices anybody can take in a route. Salaried employment, which is just I'm trading time for money. My labor and my time and my skills for an amount of money. Ideally, as my labor, as my skills and knowledge gains, I will get more money per hour, but that's essentially what salary work is. Profession is I'm going to join a profession of individuals. I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to take their training. I'm going to pass their exams, and I'm going to do the work within that field, right? Military, doctor, lawyer, engineer, plumber, carpenter, electrician, they're all professions, right? And a profession is a legally encoded thing that has legislation that says what it is. It appoints a body of work who decides whether you have a license to operate, etc. Or you can become an entrepreneur and go out. Those were my only three options when I was in the 70s and 80s, right? So when I come out into the workforce in the 1990s, I joined the military, so I chose a profession, right? I had accepted all of the limitations that went on with that, etc. Now in today's world, basically, unless you, and much people have maligned Elon Musk for his sayings about college is wasteless anymore, and Charlie Kirk uses it in some of his stuff, but we'll set some of that stuff aside. But the whole point is, unless you're joining a profession that has a prescribed set of education requirement and standard for it, there is absolutely no need. There is nothing you can't learn off the internet right now. Any skill you want to have on the face of this earth that is not tied to a profession that has a prescribed education, you can learn. For example, and the needs have changed. And I use graphic design all the time because I'm horrible at it. So before you used to have to go to graphic design school, get a degree, a diploma in graphic design, and then apply for a business job at a corporation. And the corporations demanded entry-level education requirements of a graphic design certificate, diploma, or something along that lines, right? So the industry was set to follow a certain path. Now what's happened is I'm an entrepreneur, right? So when I hire somebody to do graphic design for me, I could care less what their education is. I couldn't give two hoots if you went to degree. None of it matters. All I want to know as somebody who's handing out a contract for graphic design is that you have the ability to do graphic design. And I don't care who you are. I don't care where you live. I want to know that you can produce the actual product I need. So it's your skills that sell. You set a price based upon the market and your skills. I agree to pay. I get the product. Everybody's happy. I don't want your CV. What I want is a list of other projects you've done in a demonstration that you have social testimonials from other customers. I couldn't care less if you ever went to school for it. Not at all, right? Skill-based. But what the internet changed is the person doing graphic design does not have to seek a job with a company for graphic design. They can sell graphic design skills to the something close to 4 billion humans that are currently connected to the internet, right? That's something that didn't exist when I was. Again, that completely different economic system that existed from the boomers and the early Gen Xers in the 70 or 80 and the white picket fence and all that facilitated by a certain economic system that doesn't exist anymore. Now you have side hustles in the gig economy. Now, you can turn that into a full entrepreneurial venture if you go all in. And one of the aspects that I use for this is a friend of the family's. She's a brilliant young woman, wants to be an artist, and she's a great artist. I think she has incredible future potential. But the reality is, as she's growing her knowledge, using the internet to tell the world that she exists, she can put her art in front of 4 billion people with advertising, obviously, and doing all of that. But until it sells, until she gets traction, until she gets picked up, until she goes viral, etc., she has to pay the bills. So she works as a barista, right? The barista job, or whatever job she chooses to do, this is just an example, allows her to pay her bills while she's building her dream. So she's working in the service-based industry, which will never go away and we all love. And it provides a service to everybody, and she does a great job, and she earns sufficient income to cover her basic expenses, never meant to be a retirement or full-time job. And she is working as an artist. She has a vision that in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, she'll be able to make a living off of her art. She is using side hustles, the gig economy, and a combination of service industry jobs to be able to set her conditions. That kind of world existed to some degree before, but it was a lot harder to sell art. It was a lot harder to sell graphic design. It was a lot harder to sell services. I sell preparedness education services, right? And I sell them online. I have online courses. That didn't exist to boomers, right? I'd have to start a school, a physical place, get you to come in, have enrollment, and a whole bunch of overhead costs. Now I just sell $199 How to Adopt a Prepared Life course and $199 risk identification and preparedness course for solo entrepreneurs online, right? And so I use the internet to tell the world that it's out there. That world didn't exist before. It is a side hustle. Now, my company is involved in a number of other activities that are revenue generating. So we don't have a singular line of business, right? We don't have one line. My family doesn't have one. And I've talked about in the modern gig side hustle economy and life in 2025 that your average family should probably have 5 lines of income. That's a safe bet. Now, none of those individual lines of income are likely going to pay all of the bills, but what they collectively do is provide you a pretty robust and insulated ability. So as one or two may fall or cease altogether or need to be changed or whatever it may be, as the ebb and flow of the money, off you go. Now, in the old world, in the boomer and the X generation, what you used to have is salary would come in. It was consistent, expected, you could budget, and you knew it was going forward. Now you have an ebb and flow of money. It's kind of like when you're an entrepreneur. I'm going to say I make $100,000 a year, right? I may make $20,000 in January, $10,000 in April, $50,000 in July, and the other, say, $20,000 in September, and then nothing for 3 months. How am I working that across the line so that I cover everything for 12 months? It's the inconsistency. It's the uncertainty of the modern gig side hustle economy that people are uncomfortable with. And it's a transitionary change because, again, they're looking at what the boomers did. One job, single family income, paid the bills, had a couple of vacations, worked for 40 years. And they're saying, but I want to do that. How come I can't have that? And that condition doesn't exist anymore. They're not looking at the economic conditions in which the world is. And again, we take the phrase from, it's not that we disagree that you would prefer to live in a world where a single income could do all of that at a salary job, at a company. But companies don't do that anymore. Very few people run their entire career at one company. Most people are transitionary 3 to 5 companies in the run of a 25-year career, right? You don't stay at one place for 40 years, so you don't have a corporate pension plan, right? Those world corporations aren't doing it anymore. So it's not like it's just abandoned and nobody cares anymore. We've moved away from that model, both in the corporate and the personal sense. And so understanding the economic environment in which you live is not about whether you agree with it. I understand the people who say we need to go back to that world, right? I get your vision and I get the rationale why that. But the entire economic model of the modern capitalistic Western society is not built that way. So it doesn't matter whether you want to go back to it. It doesn't matter what you think is a good system. In fact, nobody cares. Nobody cares what I think either, right? The point being is that you have to build your economic livelihood off of the system in which you live. It's not that you like it, it's that you exist in it. If you don't like it, you're free to move to a different country that has a different system. But while you're here in Canada or North America, where total 80% of our podcast downloads is, we crossed over 71 countries, by the way. I was stoked with that one. But when we look at the economic model you're in now, you're going to have multiple lines of income, or you're going to do very well on your economic model of having preparedness funds, of having some type of emergency fund. Because if you're probably only going to work for a company 3 to 5 years, you're going to get fired and hired if you do the corporate route and like working for a company and getting jobs and salaries. You're probably going to get fired and hired, half a dozen times in 20 years, right? So you got to be able to manage that uncertainty and the infrequency of money and payments coming your way to be able to navigate that, right? Again, that's not somebody else's responsibility to pay your bills when you get fired, right? That's yours. That's the big thing about personal responsibility that's changed in this modern side hustle gig economy, right? But on top of that, it's also opened up the world of life. Think of the things you can do now, the passions, things that, and I use this phrase all the time, things that power your desire to throw your legs out of bed in the morning, right? And I don't know if you read the article that came out on the 7th of February on my Substack under Jeff Donaldson. And I wrote it about how I've looked at a lot of things that have happened in my life, and I'm in my 50s. So, if you're in your 20s or 30s, you may not relate, but I've had a lot of challenging situations in my life. And I'd realized at this point where I am later in my working life that I'm just going to do the things that bring me joy. That's my rule. The things that bring me joy, whether they be employment, income earning activities, or whether they be leisure activities. I will only do the things that bring me joy, and I will only surround myself by people whose face light up when I walk into the room. Those are the type of people, and I have every right to do that. I've talked in my books, and I've talked in 100 podcast episodes about your need to fire toxic people out of your life, right? Even if they're immediate family, brother, sister, mother, father, if they on balance bring a level of toxicity that's uncomfortable to you, you can fire a member of your family. You can fire a number of your friends. Surround yourself by people who enjoy your presence, especially people who don't have the same political views, ideological views. This is not about creating an echo chamber so that you only hear things that you want to hear. It's about surrounding yourself by people who are doing as well as you or better in life, surrounding yourself by people who want to be around you and enjoy your presence, and surrounding yourself by people who challenge you ideally, professionally, cognitively, and people that help you grow. It's about being in this group of people that you really love and care about and moving forward. And so at my part in my life, I'm 54 years old. I said, you know what? Screw this. I'm only interested in hanging around and being around people who bring me happiness and joy. I'm not worried about anybody else. I mean, I don't wish them ill will. I just wish them goodbye. It's really that simple. Have yourself a great life. So when I do that, I realize that the internet itself, and again, the modern side hustle and gig economy, has exposed my ability to make money doing things I love. I love podcasting, right? I love writing. My number one passion is writing. I love to write. I've written a couple of books. I'm going to launch another one this year. I love to write books, so I write, I record podcasts, and then I put up a YouTube video about it, right? And then I put up daily reels about different things, and I'm always posting online. This is what I love to do. The fact that eventually in my business model, to some degree it has, but over time, over the next 10 to 15 years, think about that. That's how I'm thinking. The next 10 to 15 years, this writing, podcasting and pontification and video ideas and the presentation of my ideas to the greater world and my research to the greater world and my contribution to the human condition will generate income for me and my family, right? Full stop. That's the intent. I get to do something I love, something I'm passionate about, something that I think helps the greater community of which I'm a member. It builds community resilience, and in the end, it will lead. It led to one thing where I had the opportunity, I've been given the opportunity to be invited for a speakership, right? It's paid, not a lot of money, and it shouldn't be a lot of money. That's not the point. That's the point that my generating the ideas over time, my presenting the ideas on the podcast, on LinkedIn, on Substack, and everywhere else that I've contributed in writing books has led to a personal brand being built where somebody thought it would be great to have me come speak about some of the core issues that I talk about, and are willing to fund the trip and provide a small honorarium. That is something that didn't exist pre-internet, right? So your ability to do what you love and earn an income from it has been placed exponentially greater because of the internet. But what it's tied people to do is they're still looking back at that freaking boomer generation and the boomer American dream and saying, but I want that over there, but they don't live in that world. So when you live in today's world and you understand it, it's like, okay, I've got to pay my bills, but the number of ways in which I can earn income is exponentially greater. And the joy in earning that income is exponentially greater, right? It just is, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. Hey, a quick break in the episode. We provide free preparedness and risk education across social media. If you're looking to up your game, learning to identify the risks that you and your family are exposed to, and develop a strategy to mitigate that risk, being prepared for whatever the world throws at you, drop by our website, www.preparednesslabs.ca. We've gathered the best knowledge from over 100 years of research into exactly what led to the best post-event outcomes and how people thrive in chaos. Now back to the show. And I wanted to just figure out in this little chat about life, SIG, gig economy, and side hustles with the idea that work-life balance. And I'm going to tackle this one, and I know not everybody's going to agree with it, but fair enough. That's why you put discourse out there, because I'm going to say some things you disagree with, and I hope it fires you enough to fire it. Everybody looks at work-life balance. I look at it as life. My contribution to society, right? I've talked about before in previous episodes and previous videos about my 3 rules for life. One of them is you have to pay your own way, which means don't be a burden to the people and the citizens around you. Don't expect them to pay your bills for you, right? Don't be ridiculous. Don't be a burden to your society. But the idea behind all of that is not just like, I got to run out $1 million. Like, you have the opportunity to work in whatever field you want and to do the things you love. When you do the things you love, to some degree, obviously some of it's going to be frustrating, etc. It's that work is part of your life. It is part of your contribution as a member of a collective society to help build the human condition. Work and your family life are not 2 separate things. They're not 2 parts of you. They're not your left and right cortex of your brain. It is one single part of life. It's just your life. My work in the Army, I wasn't trying to find a balance between the work I had to do in the Army and my personal family life to make sure I had a no, not at all. I was a soldier. That was part of my identity. I loved doing that work, right? And I was a father, a soldier, a husband, a coach, and a whole bunch of other things, right? It was all together as one. I don't separate work-life balance. I think it's a ridiculous concept, right? It's like you're thinking of it through the frame, or I have to go to work. I'm forced to do something I don't want to. I don't want to be here, but the economic capitalist enemies of society have forced me to go out and make money. So I have no choice but do this job I hate to get the money so I can just have a great time with my family. You know, why are you spending the weekend escaping the life you have instead of spending the weekend building the life you want, right? I mean, it's a simple equation. If you live in a world where you hate your job, the only reason you keep doing it is because you're unwilling to find one you love, right? That takes time and effort and personal responsibility. Some people are not going to agree with that. Oh, I'm forced to stay in my job. You're not forced to stay in anything. Welcome to a free, open, and democratic society. You have the ability to change your job and move to an industry which you love. You choose not to do that, right? That's your choice you make. Stop blaming everybody else around you because you're forced to do something you don't like. It's not society's job to beg, twist, turn towards what you think is appropriate. I know that's punching somebody upside the head and you're going to get angry, but that's fine. When you get up in the morning, you want to be doing whatever your role and responsibility is in society, which again, in a free and democratic society, you've chosen this, is something you enjoy doing. I loved being a soldier. Was it frustrating at times? Hell yeah. Did it make me angry at times? Hell yeah. Were some of the people ridiculous? Yeah. And they probably thought I was an idiot at one time or two. And most of the time they probably would have been right. The point being is I loved what I did. And when I stopped loving what I did, I stopped doing it. I retired from the military because the joy, the happiness, and the excitement for that responsibility went away, as it does. It's not a bad thing. Despite it, I had a great career in the Canadian Army. I loved it absolutely. Met some incredible people, got to travel to some great parts of the world. But when it no longer served me, I left. And now I'm doing something completely different, and I'm absolutely loving it. So when you sit back and you look at your life, and you sit back and look at the roles that you're filling, both your personal life, your professional life, and your leisure life, and when you look at all of those, and you ask yourself the question, am I doing what I love? Am I using and leveraging what's available to me in the modern internet-empowered age and the gig economy and side hustles to have a great time? Now, you don't have to. But what I love to make fun of is these people who are working in lower income jobs and consistently and regularly complain that they're not making enough money. But when I look at them and I say, okay, what are you doing to improve your skills, knowledge, and ability on the side so that you can start doing things and demanding a higher dollar? They're doing nothing. They simply want the world to arbitrarily inflate the wages they're getting now to a level they want. But what they don't want to do is more effort, more education, more understanding. And again, listen to what I said earlier. All of that is free on the internet, right? Increasing your skills. I don't know how to graphic design, but I know if I put my head down and I spent nights and weekends outside normal working hours, by 6 months from now, I'd be a pretty darn good graphic designer. And within a year, I'd have the skill set ready to launch a graphic design agency online and start doing it part-time and see if I could wing it with a couple of businesses, right? I could. And any field you could do that. The fact you're not doing that is perfectly fine, but it's not the fault of anybody but you, right? I know people don't like me challenging the individual. If you're happy doing what you're doing, and you're happy with the income level, then you have no need for a side hustle or a gig economy, right? It's just you get to consume things through it, but you're not really interested in it. But if you're sitting in a position where you believe that you don't have enough income to live the life that you want, somebody's got to look in the mirror and say, I'm doing something right now that's not earning sufficient or the income that I think I want to earn. What is it? What skill do I have to gain? What other activities could I do? What side hustle and what gig is available if I want to keep still doing my main income source to increase that income, right? It's the looking at the lens through the mirror, not looking at the external saying, I want to be a teacher. Teachers don't pay enough. I want to make more money. Like, for example, if you make $70,000 a year as a teacher and you want an income greater than $70,000, it's not society's failure because they're not paying you more than $70,000. It's not the need to increase teachers' wages above $70,000. It's to look at you if you're unable to live on $70,000, then you have to turn around and say, okay, how can I earn more money? Maybe I'll move up, be a principal, vice principal. Maybe I'll do some private tutoring. Maybe I'll do some other things. Maybe I'll move to an international school. Maybe there's a whole bunch of things that you can do that are 100% within your power to remain within the industry you want, but move higher up and get that extra income that you're looking for, right? The idea that I want to do this, and I'll go back and I'll finish this on my favorite reference, the young lady who's the artist. You won't hear her in a million years say she should be paid more to do her barista job. She absolutely understands that a barista job is just slightly above minimum wage for a couple of years of experience, that periodically when she gives great service, she'll get some good tips. That's all the work is worth. She completely understands that, right? Absolutely accepts it and thinks it's just that's the appropriate wage to pay. She's realized that she wants to do something different and she wants to earn more. She wants to be an artist, so she's working hard at building her art portfolio, right? She understands that if she wants to make more money, it's not somebody else's job to pay her more. It's her responsibility to earn the skills and leverage the internet, even if she gained no more skills. And actually, I'll give you another example here. If you've ever had a problem with your house, right? If you've ever had a house repair or whatever, where do we all go, right? We go to YouTube. We go onto YouTube because somebody's faced the same problem, somebody's come up with a solution, and somebody's thrown a video out there. Hundreds of videos on how to replace an electrical box, how to replace a flange on a toilet, how to get the mechanical stuff out of the toilet tank and put a new set in. But in that network, you will find there's a DIY dad channel or something like that. Some dude realized that he or she had all of the skills necessary to do these, ad hoc home repairs. They made a bunch of very intelligently laid out videos, put them on a YouTube channel, and now some of them are earning an equivalent of a regular salary off of their YouTube channel because they monetized and marketed their skill sets that they had. Something that they were already good at, they turned it into a market economy. Again, I'm going to revisit because everybody's either nodding their head or giving me the middle finger right now, or they've already turned off the podcast. The point is here, it's not that you are glad or happy that this is what the economic system looks like, right? That's not the argument. I'm going to go back to it doesn't matter whether you agree with it or disagree with it. If you live in a certain type of world, your responsibility is to adapt to the world you live in, not the one you want. This is the world we live in where the internet is there to leverage. Now, yes, you're in competition, as you should be, with everybody else who's got a great idea. We can just look at the tariff war. And again, I'm recording this on the 2nd of February. So on the 14th, I have no idea what the tariff war looks like between Canada and the US. But we'll leave it to say that there are a number of really good business opportunities that are going to pop up in the middle of all of this to make some good money. Those will complain. Those will, adjust their own activities. And my company, Preparedness Labs Incorporated, is exposed to the U.S. market. And so we have a robust plan to not only protect against the downside from the U.S. market, but also leverage some great opportunities. Somebody's going to make a crap ton of money because they were innovative, ready to go, understood the internet, understood the economic system in which they operate, and they're going to make a crap ton of money. If you're not that person, that's okay, but don't get mad when somebody else figures out how to do it and you didn't. It's just about leveraging what's available to you and understanding you live in a side hustle and gig economy that affects your life but gives you an incredible opportunity to do amazing things. And to do what I said in my note on the 7th of February is just enjoy life. Do the things that put a smile on your face and let you swing your legs out of bed in the morning. And it's pretty freaking cool when you decide to throw everything else, as we say en français, dans la poubelle, mes amis, dans la poubelle. With that, take care, stay safe, and remember, it's Valentine's Day. So hug the people you love, tell them they're worth it.